I want to share with you a few stories that really very special stories that you'll hear them, and it says in Hayom Yom, every story you hear has to touch you, b'pnimis to pnimis, in the deepest part of your soul, and the way that you take home personally. And so the stories I'm going to share with you tonight are are of that caliber that you want to take with you for the rest of your life. And so I know that with little technical difficulties getting started, but it's going to be worth the wait. I'll make it worth your wait. The Rebbe Marash in the year it was in the summertime in Tammuz in the year 1860 66. He was he had outside his house there was a garden, and in the garden there was a sort of like a sukkah that was he would go there in the summertime to study there. There was some um, uh, vegetables and other things growing there that protected this sukkah-like room and allowed him to study peacefully there. So so he's sitting there studying, and his children, who his younger son who succeeded him, the Rebbe Rashab, was then 5 years old. He was born in 1861, and his brother, the Razah, was a year and a half older, and they were playing together in the garden. And the older brother, Razah, Zalman Aaron, is saying to his younger brother, Rashab, he's saying to him, Jews and non-Jews are different. Jews study Torah, Jews pray, Jews are special people. So his younger brother, Rashab, said to his older brother, well, that's true for Jews who study Torah and pray. But what about Jews who are not studying Torah and they're not significant in their prayers? Are they different to non-Jews? That was his question. His older brother said, I don't know. So their sister, Rabbi Leah, she related this conversation to her father, the Rebbe Marash, and how the older brother didn't have any response. And the Rebbe Marash summoned his children to his sukkah-like outdoor room. And they come into this sukkah, and he asks the younger son, the Rashab, to go call Ben Tzion the Mesharis. Ben Tzion was someone who worked in the home of the Rebbe. He would say the whole book of Tilm every day. He's a very simple person, a lot of faith, but not very scholarly. And he comes into the room, and the Rebbe Marash asks him if he ate that day. Ben Tzion says he was a simple guy. He used to try to attend synagogue and pray with a minyan and be present when they taught the simple stories of the Talmud called Ein Yaakov. That's the kind of guy he was. And so the Rebbe Marash asked him if he ate. He said yes. So the Rebbe Marash asked him, did you eat well? He said, what does well mean? I'm satisfied, thank the one above. So the Rebbe Marash asked him, and why did you eat? He said, in order that I could be a Jew and serve Hashem. And he sighs. So the Rebbe Marash said, okay, thank you. And he told me he can go. Then he summoned to the room Ivan. Ivan was the driver of the Rebbe Marash, and he was raised amongst Jews, and so he knew Yiddish, and so the Rebbe Marash asked him the same question in Yiddish. Ivan, hast du gegessen? Did you eat? He says yes. Ivan, tell me, why did you eat? So Ivan says with like spittle coming out of his lips with he says, in order that I should be able to I eat to live. And why do you live? He said, I live in order I should be able to have some brandfen and farbeisen. So I should have some whiskey and some food. And he says this with a little bit of a smug smile. So Rebbe Marash told me he's able to go as well. And then he told his children the following. Look at the difference, he tells his children, between a Jew and a non-Jew. The Jew, Ben Zion, he eats to live. And why does he live? They both said they ate to live, but why do they live? Ben Zion says, I'm living in order to serve Hashem. And when he said he's living to serve Hashem, he said it with a sigh, because he didn't really feel that it was so sincere. On the other hand, he said, look at the at the non-Jew, at the Ivan, that the whole purpose of his living, why is he alive? He only wants to live in order to be able to eat and to have this he only wants to eat in order to be able to enjoy some whiskey, and he says that with a smile because he's thinking about the whiskey and the food he's going to eat. That's what the Rash shared with his children then. And it's a very powerful understanding of the majesty of a Jew, but not every Jew is like that. Not every Jew has that great upbringing like Ben Zion did, although he wasn't as scholarly as the other Hasidim, but he was brought up with faith. And the question is, what about people who aren't brought up that way? There was a Chassid whose name was Rabbi Zislin, Shmuel Ber Zislin, Shom Ber Zislin, and he was a very, very smart, gifted teacher. He was invited to test some students in another Chabad day school, a cheder. And he went with another gentleman there to test the students. And one of the questions that one of the students was asked was, why did Rashi say what he said? Where does Rashi get this from? So the student, the young boy, answers, Rashi knew this with divine inspiration. Okay. So he asks another child, how did Rashi know this? Other child explained that Rashi knew this interpretation of the Torah because without this interpretation, you can't explain it any other way. That's how Rashi knew it. So Rabbi Zislin said to the other rabbi, he said, what do you think the teacher taught these students? Did he tell them what the first student said, that Rashi knew this with divine inspiration? Or did he tell them what the second student said, that Rashi knew this because Rashi inferred his interpretation from a question that this verse leaves you with? So the rabbi said, I'm sure the teacher must have told them what the second boy said, not what the first boy said. But the second boy said that Rashi knew this because of the question in the verse. That's how Rashi knew this. So the Rabbi Zislin said, he went further. So why is it why did the first boy say that Rashi knew this because of divine inspiration? How did he get that? The teacher didn't tell it to him. So how did he get that? So to answer this, Rabbi Zislin said the following. Torah says that Esav was very deceitful, and he tried to deceive his father to think that he was righteous. He used to ask his father all kinds of questions about Jewish law that showed that he was so concerned about Jewish law. And like, for example, he asked his father, do you have to separate 10% to charity from salt? Like all kinds of questions that highlight that portrayed him as this righteous person who's concerned about Jewish law. So the Torah says that when Esav brought his father food, or actually more correctly, when Jacob, posing as Esav, brought his father food, his father asked him, how'd you get this so fast? And his father answered, Yaakov answered, that Hashem helped me. So Yitzchak was surprised. Why did Esav, who never mentions God's name, why did he say, Hashem helped me? That's not the way Esav speaks. So the Rabbi Zislin asked the other rabbi, if Esav was so concerned to always portray himself as a righteous person, how come he didn't speak that way? How come he didn't speak in the way like God helped me? And to the extent that Yitzchak was suspicious when he heard Yaakov say oh, God help me, and therefore he thought it must have not been Esav, must have been someone else. Why didn't Esav just choose to say always, whenever Esav spoke to his father, Hashem helps me this way, Hashem helps me that way? Only Yaakov spoke that way. Why is it that only Yaakov spoke that way? The resistant answered, because Yaakov had a Hasidic teacher. He had a good Malamed, he had a good teacher. And there's certain things you get just by being in the environment of a good teacher. In other words, although the other student didn't hear from his teacher that Rashi knew this was divine inspiration, but nevertheless, because of who his teacher was, because of the environment that the teacher gave the students, this was something natural the student said. So the question, though, is, what about Jews who are not given this environment and they're not brought up in that kind of way? And so I want to share with you a story that I just heard right before Shabbos this week that was shared by Rabbi Yosef Gurevich, who is from Tzfas, and he heard the story in 1985 from the one who the story happened with, who's still alive, and gesund, a certain Mr. Alkabetz. The Alkabetz family is a very colorful family in Jewish scholarship. The great-grandfather of the current mayor of Afula, Mr. Alkabetz in Israel, was the author of the Lechadodi. And the father of the mayor of Afula today, he is the hero of the story that I'm going to share with you. In 1985, there was a Farbrengen in Afula, and they asked Mr. Alkabetz to share his story. This is what he shared. He said he worked for a bank called Bank Discount in Israel. He was very successful. But the bank had another branch in America, in Manhattan, that wasn't so successful. So they offered him to manage this bank in America, and to instead of this bank in Afula. And he was very excited about this opportunity because go to America sounded attractive offer, Manhattan. So he right away accepted, and they said they're going to give him a trial period of 3 months to see if he's able to revive the bank. So he's not religious at all. And he comes to Manhattan, and he leaves Manhattan without his wife, just for a short trip for 3 months. Well, it's a longer trip for 3 months, but it's only 3 months. He's going to go without his wife, and he comes to America. And apparently the bank system in America wasn't similar to the bank system in Afula in Israel. And because of this, he was not successful in reviving the bank, and he had to go back to Israel at the end of the 3 month period. But before he went back to Israel, he wanted to buy some electronic devices. Apparently the electronics in Israel are far more expensive, like triple the price of electronics in America. At least that's the way it was in the mid 80s. And so he asked around, where is there a good electronics store that can? And so they told him, people he asked told him, there's this neighborhood called Crown Heights. There's a street called Kingston Avenue. And in Kingston Avenue, there's a store called Drimmers. And go to Drimmers. That store is no longer in business. I think it was replaced by Judaica World on Kingston Avenue and President Street. And so he comes to Drimmers. And he walks in the Drimmers, and he gets electronics he's looking for. And he notices on the wall that there are these big, beautiful pictures of the Rebbe in these wooden frames, nice, beautiful frames. And he had seen the Rebbe's photo in newspapers in Israel, because for every holiday, the Rebbe sent a letter addressed to all the Jewish people. And this letter was printed in newspapers in Israel with the Rebbe's picture. So he recognized the Rebbe's picture, and he was curious, like, wow, where this rabbi is from New York. Where is the synagogue? Oh, when I go, where is synagogue? Well, you go from President Street, you go down 1 block, 2 blocks to Eastern Parkway, and you take a left in Eastern Parkway, and you're right there. Really? Yes. Can I see the Rebbe? Sure. He comes to the synagogue. It was 3:10. The Rebbe would pray mincha in those days, in 1985, upstairs at 3:15. So he's waiting to see the Rebbe. And the Rebbe comes out, to his good fortune, he got to see the Rebbe, and something about just seeing the Rebbe touched him deeply in his soul. And he said to himself these words: I have to give this man the most precious thing that I have. This is who it belongs to. This is who it should be given to. That's what he felt in his neshama. Don't ask me why, what, how. This is a Jew's soul reacting to seeing a tzaddik. I must give the precious thing, the most precious thing that I have. What was the most precious thing that he had? So although he wasn't religious, but nevertheless, the most precious thing that he had in his family was a heirloom that was passed over from generation to the generation. It was a Megilah that was written by his great-great-grandfather, Shlomo Alkabetz, who wrote a Megilah with his own handwriting, and that's what he wanted to give the Rebbe. So he wrote a short note to the Rebbe, explaining why he wants to give the Rebbe this gift. And this yeshiva student who had befriended him told him that's the way to converse with the Rebbe. You send the Rebbe a note, and the Rebbe will decide if he wants to accept your gift. So immediately, which is very unusual, the Rebbe responded with 3 points. I'm paraphrasing. Point number 1 is the Talmud says whoever hates gifts will live longer. So therefore, it's not the best thing to take gifts. Okay, so it looks like the Rebbe's not going to take it. But the Rebbe added 2 more points. The Rebbe said point number 2, you don't give away as a gift something that's a family heirloom, something that was passed over as an inheritance, shouldn't be given away. And point number 3, the Rebbe would appreciate if you could make a photocopy of the Megillah. The actual Megillah you should keep, but if you could make a photocopy of it, he would appreciate it. So he took the Megillah and he looked around Crown Heights for a photocopy machine. In those days, it wasn't such a common thing to have, and the only photocopy machine he could find was somewhere middle of in the library, Leib's library on Kingston Avenue. He found there the only photocopy machine in Crown Heights at the time, apparently, and he copies the Megillah. He copies the Megillah, and he gives it into the Rebbe's secretary. Okay, he's going to go back to America, and last few days in America, and there's a knock on his hotel room. He opens the door to his hotel. Who's there? His wife. He was concerned. He was like shocked. Why is she here? Did something happen in the family? Like he didn't expect her to come. But she said, "Listen, you came to America. You wanted to see America. I also want to see America. So let's stay a few more days. Let's see America. You're going back to Israel, but I want also, you're here. I decided to surprise you." Okay. So they go see the various sites in New York City, and he also shares with his wife about his experiencing the Rebbe. She says, "You know what? I want to see that man too." Okay. So the day before their flight to return to Israel, they come to 770 for Mincha, but they arrived 1 minute too late. The Rebbe had already come into the synagogue to pray, and they couldn't. They were waiting if those familiar with 770, they were waiting in the hallway upstairs in 770, and the door to the synagogue was already closed, and they were very, very, very upset. But her husband said, "Don't worry, it's not over. The Rebbe's going to come back through the same door back to his room. You can see the Rebbe on the way back." Okay. And the Rebbe would, after Mincha, the Rebbe opened the door. The Rebbe would open the door, turn the knob slowly, and his husband says he's going to come out now. They're standing upstairs, if you're familiar, by the elevator, with their back to the elevator, right in front of the Rebbe's door, waiting and the Rebbe comes out holding a siddur, and they see the Rebbe. And suddenly, Mrs. Alkabetz breaks down, and she burst out crying. And he said, "My wife wasn't really a very emotional person, and she didn't really like religious people. They weren't religious at all. But all of a sudden, when she saw the Rebbe, she burst out crying, like a dam of tears came out of her. And he wasn't like planning, but he saw his wife cry, and he also cried. He burst out crying as well. And the Rebbe sees them there, and the Rebbe looks at his secretary, like, what's going on? And the Rebbe says, "This is Mr. Alkabetz, and they're going back to Israel." So the Rebbe went into his room, and everybody wished him a blessing for their journey. And Rebbe went into his room and immediately came out with 2 siddurim, one for Mr. and Mrs. Alkabetz, for each of them, and 250 shekel notes, and the blessing again for a successful journey. They go to the airport, and they're in the airplane. They're sitting together, and finally, he asks his wife, like, "What happened to you? Why did you suddenly cry when you saw the Rebbe?" And she said that when she saw the Rebbe, she suddenly pictured her father, who she hadn't seen for 30 years since he passed away. She suddenly saw her father again, and she said to her husband, "I'm I'm finished with the lifestyle that we have now. I want from now on to keep kosher. I want from now on to keep Shabbat. I want from now on that things should be different. We shouldn't have the same kind of lifestyle we had till now." That's what she tells her husband. And her husband agreed. And from that day on, as he shared, and that uh, for bringing in Afula, he and his wife took on three mitzvahs: Shabbos, kosher, and a third I don't remember. And actually, Rabbi who shared the story didn't remember what the third thing was. They took on those three mitzvahs religiously. Now, a year or two ago, unfortunately, Mrs. Alkabetz, she's still alive and well, and her husband is also alive in Israel. Mrs. Alkabetz contracted, unfortunately, Yana Machla. She got the disease that we don't even want to say by name that starts with a C, and she decided that she's going to go visit New York and go to the Rebbe's Ohel. And she arranged that some yeshiva student should pick her up and show her where the Ohel is, and this yeshiva student shared with Rabbi Gorevich what happened when she went into the Ohel. She went into the Ohel, and she said, "I am the woman who met you many years ago, and seeing you made me very emotional, and that experience changed my life. I'm asking you for a blessing for my life. I want to live." That's what she said in the Ohel. "I want to live. Why do you ask you for a blessing to live?" And that's what she said. And miraculously, after she visited the Ohel, 100%, she wasn't well at all. She was deathly ill, but after she visited the Ohel, the entire disease, 100% of it was gone. She became complete. She had a complete, total, immediate recovery. So just like highlights that even someone who wasn't brought up with Judaism, and nevertheless on the surface of the neshama, is on the surface of who they are in this physical world, is their neshama, and they're just seeing the Rebbe just exposed what they always had inside. Therefore, there was this immediate gravitation to Torah and Yiddishkeit, and that's true for all of us. We all have that. I'll share with you one more story before I let you guys go. The another story about the Rebbe Marash, again, because his birthday was just this past Friday. So I want to share one more story about the Rebbe Marash. In the year Tafresh Lamed Beis, which is 1870, I'm sorry, 1879, the Rebbe Rashab turned 12, and his father, I'm sorry, 1871, 72. He turned 12, and that it was Shabbos Vayera, and a lot of Hasidim visited that Shabbos, and the Rebbe Marash welcomed them, and he had an audience with many of the Hasidim. But on that Sunday, the Rebbe Marash said to his Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, who was his attendant, he said he doesn't want to have any more audiences that day. He only wants to invite 3 Hasidim to come to his room, because he has something private to share with those 3 Hasidim. 3 Hasidim, 3 prominent Hasidim, the Shnei Zalman Zalta Polsky from Kremenchuk, Reb Shnei Zalman, the Rav of Koritz, of Polotsk, and the third Chassid, Reb Leib of Nevel. He invited them to sorry, he invited them to his room with his son, Rebbe Rashab, who had turned 12 years old. And when they came to his room, he lit 6 candelabras, and he said, "Today is for me a day of joy, because my son, the Rebbe Rashab, has finished memorizing the entire Sidrei Mishnah, or the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, all 6 orders of the Mishnah." It was a custom, the Rebbe Mamash shared, to all of the Rabbeim to finish the Mishnayos at the age of 13. But his son, the Rebbe Rashab, he finished at the age of 12. He called his son Rashab by his acronym of his name, because by the Rashab's bris, the Tzemach Tzedek, the grandfather of the Rebbe Rashab, also called the Rebbe Rashab Rashab, as he later became known. When he became the Rebbe of Chabad, he was called the Rebbe Rashab. So he said, my son Rashab finished the Mishnayos, in other words, a year early. And he continued. The Baal Shem Tov instituted that everyone should say Tehillim by heart. The Mezitchim Maggid instituted that people should memorize Hazinu. But the Alter Rebbe instituted that we should memorize Mishnayos, because Mishnah has the same letters as Neshama. That's what the Rebbe Marash shared with them. And then he shared with them a whole discourse about the end of the last Mishnayos, and how the Mishnayos concludes with 2 teachings: the teachings of Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, how the vessel for peace, the vessel for blessing is peace, and the teaching of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, who taught that Hashem will give us, when Mashiach comes, a great revelation of godliness, which he refers to as 310 worlds. And he explained the reason why the teaching of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was written before the teaching of Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta, even though Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta was older than Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and not necessarily was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi even one of the Tanaim, different opinions about Shimon ben Levi. Anyways, he said the reason why the order was this specific way was because in order to merit the revelation of Mashiach, it's what Rabbi Shimon ben Levi taught about the revelation of Mashiach is through Shalom. Through peace, and explained that peace refers to the way we merit peace. What is peace? He explained peace is about the fusion of the godly soul with Hashem. Peace is about the fusion of the godly soul with the animal soul. And what brings the blessing of peace? The study of Torah. That's what he said. And then, after this deep, intricate discourse, he shared with these 3 Chassidim a story. He said that the Alter Rebbe's son, Rabbi Moshe, was born in the summer in I don't know which year. The Rabbi Moshe was 11 years older than his nephew, the Tzemach Tzedek, and his bris, the Alter, was very exact with his time. So everyone was ready for the bris of Rabbi Moshe at 7 o'clock in the morning. Everyone had already finished davening, waiting for the bris at 7 o'clock in the morning. But the bris was delayed from 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12, and I was wondering why is the bris delayed? But then this man comes in. And although it was a summertime, he was wearing a fur coat, and he was also had a knapsack. And as soon as he came in, the Alter Rebbe came out of his room and said the bris is going to start now, and he gives a Shalom Aleichem to this man, who no one knew who he was, the Shalom Aleichem Rebbe Tzalel. Greetings to you, Rebbe Tzalel. And he honored Rebbe Tzalel to place the baby on the chair of Elijah. And then the Alter Rebbe also said that, as customary, the baby is given from the wine of the cup. This Rebbe Tzalel should give the baby, Ramosha, from the cup of wine. And all the Chassidim were wondering, who is this Rebbe Tzalel? And they tried to talk to him, and all he said was that he was a shepherd, who was a shepherd in a region called, in a city near a region near the city of Shvinzian. So he didn't want to tell them who he was too much, just that he's a shepherd. And he didn't share with them anything. And then they wanted to talk to him more, but then he disappeared. So they told the Alter Rebbe that all he told us was that he is a shepherd. So Alter Rebbe said, indeed, he's a shepherd for 40 years. He's a shepherd in this region near Shvenzian, and he knows by heart. The Alter Rebbe said the Gemara, the Tosefta, the Rambam. He's studying for 40 years. He knows it all by heart. But the Alter Rebbe said, although he knows it all by heart, what allows his neshama to shine is the memorization of Mishnah, because Mishnah is the same letters as neshama. That's what the Rebbe shared with those three Chassidim and celebrating the occasion of the Rebbe Rashab's 12th birthday and his memorization of Mishnah. So there are different ways that we could bring our soul to expression, but the bottom line is that it's on the surface. A Jew has a neshama, has a soul, and it affects our whole persona of who we are. And even someone, as in the story I shared, who had didn't think even twice about his neshama, all of a sudden it it was revealed just meeting the Rebbe one time. So in a similar way, by memorizing Mishnayos and mitzvahs in general, the Torah says when wine comes in, secrets come out. By a person drinking the wine of Torah in a mitzvah, it brings out who you are and what you are. So the main thing is that we should merit the coming of Mashiach. Mashiach will reveal in every Jew who they are and what they are, and we should celebrate the coming of Mashiach tonight and the absolute victory of Am Yisrael over all of our enemies. B'karev mamish. A good vach and a freilich